Hello, bonjour, namaste, ni hao, and ohio everybody. What is going on? It is Galeriot here, and welcome back to the YouTube channel once again for another Danmachi Season 5 video. And today we're finally getting around to doing the cut contents video for episodes 1 and 2. Now, of course, you might be wondering, what about episode 3? That'll be in a few days' time. I just want to get episodes 1 and 2 out of the way, considering I've literally done all the research I can for those two episodes, and I've been waiting to make this video, but I've just been kind of like in two minds, you know? One, do I wait another episode or two to let things go by just to make sure that what I'm going to be saying in this video is right? Or do I just do it? Because the thing is, right, especially with episode 1, there's a couple of things that I want to talk about that I'm not sure if I should talk about, because technically it could be spoilers because they could add it later down the line, and I'll talk about that in just a moment as to why I think that might be the case. Or do I just talk about it right now? And I think I've decided I'm just going to talk about it right now because I don't know. We just simply don't know. The only people who know if it's actually going to be happening in later episodes is literally Omori-sensei and the production team at JC Staff for Danmachi Season 5. So, to be honest, I'm just going to get it out of the way. I'm going to rip the band-aid. I'm going to cover the cut contents in this episode and, of course, or this video, and talk about episodes 1 and 2's cut content. And I'm just going to, get it out off my chest because I have no idea. If I just keep waiting and waiting and waiting and waiting, I'm gonna be waiting until episode 13 at this point or something like that. You know what I mean? So let's get it out of the way. Let's do it right here, right now. We're here for the cut contents for episodes 1 and 2. If you guys going to enjoy this video, remember to leave a like, smash that subscribe button, and of course, comment down below as well if I missed out on anything, or if you want any further explanations regarding any specific scene, feel free to let me know in the comment section down below. Now, of course, I'm not going to go into too much detail regarding especially volume 15, which I think is going to cover a majority of this video. To be quite honest, I think the first 10-15 minutes is literally going to be volume 15, but I don't want to extend it by too much because there's a lot of scenes to go over regarding volume 15, because volume 15 has suffered the same fate that volume 8 did, where it got some scenes adapted but almost everything else was just completely cut. And according to Omori Sensei, and the reason why Omori Sensei did this, I've made a separate video actually talking about this because he tweeted it out, is because of pacing issues. And I see what he means, because the way volume 15 is structured as a light novel is that it goes past, present, past, present, past, present, past, present, and it keeps changing between continuously between POVs as well, and it's a bit of an all over the place light novel if you think about it from an anime perspective. So I completely get from an anime viewer's perspective, having it in the middle of a season, especially or at the start of the season, is going to be very confusing. That being said, though, this is the reason why I've been saying for a very long time that especially volume 8 and volume 15, I get that they can't be adapted in season, but they should be like a prelude. Like each episode can be one of the chapters from volume 15, and unfortunately they've decided not to do it. I'm still hoping and praying that they do inevitably adapt it in some way, shape, or form. Omori Sensei himself has said that he wants to see that happen potentially down the line as well. And I'd love to see it happen because it's so much character development just completely lost, especially because volume 15 contains characters such as Aina, Lily, Wealth, Haruhime Mikoro, Eyes as well. It's kind of frustrating that we missed out on so many characters, their development and stuff, even in volume 8 as well. Now, of course, let's not talk about volume 8. Let's talk about volume 15 here now, right? So the main scenes that are added actually from volume 15, I should start off with the added scenes from volume 15 first and foremost, is Lily's level up to level 2. That was added from volume 15, and the entirety of the Ryu and Hostess of Fertility sequence, that was added from volume 15. So those were the two main sequences added from Danmachi volume 15, light novel Danmachi volume 15, which I think it makes sense considering all things said and done. I think those were the best scenes that they could have possibly added considering the connotations it'll have later down the line in the season as well. So for me, I think that makes a lot of sense. Ryu, we know her involvement in this season is pretty high, especially alongside Sierra and Belle, so it makes sense on that front, right? However, when it comes to cut contents, there is a lot to go through. So the way, like I said, how volume 15 is structured, right, is it goes between the past and it goes between the present. It is a very interesting light novel in my opinion, because a lot of it is actually adapted in Danmimo in a way, technically, because the first two chapters surround Belle and Hestia's past, and their present in a way. So their past being, of course, when they first come to Orario, their introduction to Orario, the way they are treated in Orario. You know, Bell trying to go find a familiar. He's spending his last couple of Valis he has on living in the inn, and he's not able to find a familiar. Hestia, you know, leeching off of Hephaestus, and then still trying to find, you know, somebody that she can start a familiar with, and then obviously how they those two meet. And then, of course, it jumps to the present timeline where we obviously see Belle's appreciation. And so, same with Hestia's appreciation of, you know, finding that familiar. I mean, you know, obviously, Hestia even actually mentions in the light novel that, you know, she was hoping that she'd have a big familiar like how Loki does. But she's just very happy that she has a familiar. She has a home to come to. She has a fireplace to light up as being the goddess of Earth, right? So she's super happy with all of that, and it actually goes to show, you know, how Hestia is developed as a character as well, because a lot of people still remember the Hestia from, you know, season 1, season 2, that very bratty, very immature, very new goddess, right? And to be fair, if you think about it, Hestia is still a fairly new goddess, 6 months old only, technically, as a goddess of a familiar. And, you know, she's gone through so much alongside Belle, right? Equally, I would say. Both of them have gone through so much. And so the development has been there from Hestia's side as well. It's just a shame that it's been kind of locked behind some of these sequences. And, you know, we all complain about Eyes not having enough development time in the main series and in the anime, right? I'd say in the anime, Hestia has been done a little bit dirty as well, because you see her development, you see the growth, and sometimes they don't show it in the anime, unfortunately, which is a damn shame. So those are the first 2 chapters. We don't get those in the anime, but we do actually get those 2 past scenes in Danmimo. So of course, if you want to check it out, Danmimo actually had that whole sequence. I can't remember the name of the event exactly. I'll try and find it and then maybe mention it in the comment section, or if somebody knows about it and knows the name off the top of their head already, leave it in the comments section down below. But effectively, they show the past of both Bella and Hestia and how they come to Orario, their, you know, their paths as they, you know, slowly, you know, find each other in a way, kind of, you know. So those are the 2 sequences and scenes that are in Danmimo, but not in the anime, of course, right? And of course, we don't have the present sequences anywhere else to watch, unfortunately. After that, it goes into a couple of different characters. Then it goes into Lily, whose level up scene we actually see. But then after that, we see, obviously, Soma Familia, you know, the Soma Familia a little bit. And we see Soma recognizing that Lily has gotten stronger. And the new captain of the Soma Familia actually asks Soma if, you know, he wants to go meet Lily. And he says he's not worth it anymore. You know, he's not worth, you know, or he doesn't have the authority, or even the, what's it called? The best word here would be he doesn't have the, he doesn't have the right. Yes, there we go. He doesn't have the right to meet Lily anymore, especially considering how badly he failed her. And then we go into her past sequence again, similar to what we saw in season 1 with Lily's, you know, past, right? It actually would have been a much more extended view of it in this light novel cut content, basically, where we see her, you know, joining the Soma Familia, being treated so poorly, how she started stealing from adventurers, and so on and so forth. So it would have been a really more in-depth look into that as well. Then we move on to Welf, and it's a very similar situation. Again, we see the past and the present. Then we move to Aina, which was a little bit of a surprise to me at the time when the light novel happened, was Aina's past and present. And of course, it was a little bit weird considering, you know, we know how important she is. And again, I would say that the light novel actually emphasizes that extremely so. But it was a bit of a surprise to see her getting a intermission and a chapter as well, because of course, you know, you think about it and it's like you have so many different characters that probably could have gotten one, right, alongside, you know, Haruhime, Mikoto, and so on and so forth as well, who do get one as well. But yeah, it's kind of interesting to say the least, right? Then we get to Haruhime and Mikoto, who also get one past and present. Again, if you want me to go into more detail about what exactly happens in those sequences, let me know in the comment section down below. I'm going over the ones that I think are the most important ones, and I personally believe that the most important one is Eyes, who I'll come on to in just a moment. We see views entirely in the anime pretty much when it comes to her present. Actually, we see the hostess of fertility party, we see her going out and taking the trash, Belle coming and joining her and stuff like that, right? The development of their relationship in a way, right? It's in the light novel. A lot of people thought that that was just added for the sake of, you know, fan service and stuff, or just, developing their relationship more, from season 4 as a way to kind of sell that relationship more. But no, it actually happens in the light novel as well, so that's not something that's brand new either. And then we come on to the epilogue of volume 15, which is, I think, the most critical scene that I was really hoping would be in season 5, and I'm still holding out some hope that it might be there in some way, shape, or form, in some form of flashback or something. Because this scene is surrounding Eyes, effectively. Not to a great degree, because the way it starts is actually pretty tragic. We immediately cut to an adventurer, a male adventurer and a female adventurer, as part of the, I don't remember which familiar it is. It starts with some D something, Dignell, something like that. I think it's like Dignell familiar or something, or Dirgnell familiar. I could be wrong. Somebody can let me know if I'm, which one it is. But it starts with D for sure. And it's pronounced something like that. And effectively what you see is the female adventurer has died, unfortunately, in the adventure. And we see Bell and his party coming across them and helping them out. And Bell, hearing the adventurer asking for revenge, asking for Bell to take the monster down. And you see Bell going into like autopilot mode to take down the monster, but not feeling that sense of revenge even after he kills the monster, not feeling that sense of accomplishment, especially when you see at the end of the sequence, which I think was super tragic. I think it could have been such a good scene to have in the anime, because it would have shown again the whole danger of the dungeon, even though I know this season is not dungeon focused, and I think that's kind of why they didn't want to show that first part. Maybe potentially, again, I think it was necessary anyways. You get to see the dangers of the dungeon, you get to see the troubles of the dungeon, and I think that scene could have been amazing to have at the start of season 5. I think, especially for those who are dungeon fanatics in the comment section. I know y'all want that dungeon shenanigans going on, those dungeon scenes, right? I think that could have been a fantastic scene to start off with. But again, it could have been a bit of a false promise, because technically we don't get ourselves involved in the dungeon that much at the beginning of the season, right? So of course, I think that that would have been amazing to see as well, right? Is potentially seeing that whole sequence. But of course, what happens later is, of course, Bell, sees how broken the male adventurer is. Seeing the female adventurer pass away, just died laying there in his arms. And the worst part is the way they structure, or the way Omori structures the sentencing of this sequence, right? Is he also talks about how the population, when they come out from the dungeon, when there are people just watching and staring at them carrying a dead body, and it's like, wow, you get to feel that. I feel you get to feel the danger of the dungeon through that. And I think that again is the reason why I would have loved to have seen it in the anime. And so that whole sequence happens, and then Belle, of course, out of like empathy and sympathy, decides to go and get flowers for this female adventurer to place it on her graveyard, which is in the first graveyard, of course, the first graveyard containing the bodies of many adventurers, including some older heroes as well. And then he sees Eyes there at the end of the sequence, basically. At the end of the scene, at the end of the chapter, at the end of the epilogue, he sees Eyes in front of a graveyard called Albert Waldstein. Now, of course, if you guys know who Albert is, his connection with Eyes, you already know how important that scene is. And again, this is one of those scenes that should have been in the anime, in my opinion, for the overarching plot. Because it's the first time Belle actually hears of Albert Waldstein properly, and his potential connection with Eyes. That is the more important part, his potential connection with Eyes, because of course for Belle, he's like wondering why is Eyes in front of Albert's graveyard, and so on and so forth, and what is the link. And of course we know for the overarching plot how important that is against the one-eyed black dragon and stuff. So it's kind of a shame we didn't get that scene in the anime, and I was kind of hoping that this episode 3, of course I'm not going to spoil anything from episode 3 because it's just come out literally a day ago, so I'm not going to spoil anything, but we have a scene in episode 3 that I thought would have been a perfect opportunity for that flashback sequence to happen, and it didn't happen, unfortunately. I will spoil that much, at least for sure, is that it didn't happen. So it's kind of disappointing that they missed out on it. There is a small glimmer of hope that they could do it in the future, but there's a very good chance equally as well, and a very high chance equally, I should say, that it won't happen at all, which is a damn shame in my opinion. After they adapted the Ryu sequence and Lily sequence, it just goes straight into volume 16 stuff. So that is the entirety of volume 15. Again, I don't mind doing a bit of a mini review of volume 15, going over all the chapters and everything and recapping each and every single chapter and kind of talking about my thoughts on it, because of course you guys probably may not be reading the chapter and may not know what exactly goes down, and I haven't really specified stuff that happens with Mikoto Haruhime, with Welf and Aina. So if you guys want me to do that as well, I can do that for sure. I just didn't want this to be too long of a sequence because there's just so much to cover when it comes to volume 15. It's pretty much the entire light novel that they skipped out on, outside of like one mini part of a chapter and then one major intermission, and that's it. That's all they've done. So it's not completely, it's not fair if I just devote the entire episode to volume 15, you know what I mean? So let me know if you guys would like me to do that down the line. Now we go into volume 16, and to be quite honest, the volume 16 stuff, they adapted the prologues, the two prologues, and chapter 1 primarily, and honestly they did it fairly well. I think they did a fantastic job with it, to be honest. I think episode 1 gave me a bit of hope that at least, when it comes to the volumes itself, that they're fully adapting 16, 17, and 18, they do a really good job there, right? And I think they actually did a good job, honestly. So they did a great job there. Nothing was really missing, I would say, from episode 1, to be quite honest. I don't think so, at least in terms of volume 16, so I'm not going to really talk too much about it. The only thing I would say that was kind of missing, I would say, is obviously the whole interaction with Belle, trying to look into Albert a little bit more, which makes sense. It wasn't in the episode because, of course, of the fact that, well, we didn't get the scene in volume 15, so there's no point in him researching Albert, because it wouldn't have made any sense as to why he's researching Albert, unless they did something where he starts researching Albert, we see him researching Albert, and then we see a flashback sequence with Eyes and him, in front of Albert's grave. But again, we can't really do much about that one, unfortunately. That's the decision they've made, so that whole scene was cut. And Welf's explanation of the Elegia Festival, or Elegia Festival, I still don't know how to pronounce that name right properly. I'll call it the Elegia Festival. The Elegia Festival takes place a little bit before the Harvest Festival, and it's basically to mourn those who have passed away, the adventurers, the heroes that have passed away over the last decades, centuries, millenniums even, you could say, right? Those who have fought for the lives of those people and beat monsters of much, much higher strength and effectively destruction level effective, so that is effectively what the Elegia Festival is. It's the mourning period before the harvest period, which is a much more, hyped up period where, everybody gets into that, a festive mood, a happier mood to celebrate, the harvest, effectively, is the best way to put it, right? So yeah, those are the only two things really missing from episode 1, is Aiza's link with Albert and the Elegia Festival, of course, right? Now we move on to episode 2, and this is where things get a little bit interesting, because episode 2, I think, follows the light novels fairly well again. However, there are things, they're starting to skip now again. And I would say that whatever they skipped in episode 2, for season 5, is actually pretty good. The right decisions, in my opinion. So the first major one that I noticed was effectively the Hestia Familia going and asking help from the Take and Miak Familia to get help for, finding Belle, basically, after he got kidnapped by Herin, right? The Hestia Familia goes to those two familias to actually help to find Belle. And unfortunately, that scene actually also has a bit of a repercussion because, well, technically, we see Belle meeting Cassandra and Daphne, right? In the light novel, they actually ask Belle as to where has he been. The Hestia Familia has been super worried and stuff like that. That doesn't really happen in the anime, right? Because, of course, we don't see the Take and Miak familias joining them to find Belle, right? And then, of course, we also don't really fully see Herin actually doing the pass parades for Belle to test his riz on females in the dungeon, right? So we saw that, Belle was helping out the lower level female adventurers in the dungeon, right? And what we don't see is that Herin is actually the one who put them in that situation. So that is something, again, you could put up as a black mark against Herin, but they didn't show that in the anime, so those anime onlys don't really know about that actually as well. We also missed out on a bit of a monologue slash intermission actually as well, where Seer actually goes to ask help from Otaro for the date as well. So that is another thing that's completely missing, and I think that would have been a very funny sequence to add as well. But it would have been interesting and fun to see how that would have panned out as well. And then I think the most major sequence actually that they cut entirely is the orphanage sequence. So the orphanage is something that was actually majorly shown in volumes in volume 8 actually, primarily I would say. In volume 8 it was shown, of course, right? They showed the orphanage in volume 8, which again we don't see in the anime, unfortunately. It's something that's actually shown in Danmimo. So again, I highly recommend you guys go watch Danmimo, because Danmimo actually does a lot more of the light novel content than the anime actually ever does. So I would highly recommend you guys go and check out the check out Danmimo's adaptation of certain light novels like Volume 8 and Sword Art Toria, and also, well, that's about it. Those two primarily, I would say. So it's good if you guys go and do that, because you'll be able to see a lot of the sequences that should have been in the anime as well. But unfortunately, due to them not doing it previously in previous seasons, you can tell that they had to cut it because of that. And I think it makes sense, because why would you bring up a sequence and a set of characters and setting that none of the anime viewers will be able to identify or relate to at all, because these are kids and stuff that were shown in previous seasons and are pretty important to Seer and Belle's relationship. And again, I think a lot of people may feel like Seer doesn't actually have that much connection with Belle in terms of, the past couple of seasons. They only know each other really well, primarily thanks to, of course, her help with Belle, her helping Belle in certain moments, and then the Hostess of Fertility as a whole, generally speaking, right? But Belle and Seer have actually had many more moments that unfortunately the anime has not adapted, unfortunately, due to various reasons, be it being volume 8 or be it being cut content, generally speaking, over the past couple of seasons, right? So it's kind of unfortunate in that sense. But yeah, it's a sequence that's completely cut entirely. You get to see, Seer's dress actually being ripped apart. Belle goes and gets her a new outfit as well. There's just so many parts to the orphanage sequence that was just completely chopped off the block. But I think if they had to choose anything to cut, that was the right decision, because nobody would have understood it, and nobody would have gotten what that meant at all, or who the characters were that were going to be featured if they had done the orphanage scene. So unfortunately, again, it's one of those things that unfortunately it got cut, but it was cut for the right reasons. You know what I mean? So I think that was a major thing to note, of course, with episode 2. And honestly, outside of that, nothing else was cut again. I think they did a fantastic job with episode 2 as well. And the main thing I really liked about episode 2 is that they added like scenes, or at least added like subtle motions and just generally behaviors to certain characters that I think they did extremely well with, and actually nailed the the behaviors of certain characters because of that, because of the way they were able to show their facial expressions, the way they behaved in terms of what they were doing, and so on and so forth. I think they added those sequences and settings really well, especially in my opinion. I think the most iconic one, and the one that I think everybody will be able to talk about fairly well, is of course Ai's eating the Jagamaru-kuns at a much more rapid rate, basically stress eating effectively when she sees Belle with Seer. Again, adding that effect of Ai's developing emotions with Belle and trying to figure out why she's so annoyed with seeing Belle with Seer, and she's just stress eating. Those sort of things and those more minor details are so well done, in my opinion. And again, that is one thing I'll give credit where it's due to episodes 1 and 2 both so far, is that the facial expressions, the behaviors, the subtleties are really well done. And I'm hoping they continue with that from here on out. But yes, in terms of cut content, that is the primary ones those are the primary cuts that they made for episodes 1 and 2. We will be making a video on episode 3 fairly soon, so don't worry about that. Thank you guys so much for watching this video. Let me know again if you want me to expand on anything furthermore. I will do my very best to do so, and if you feel like there should be some adjustments to the format as well, feel free to let me know. This will be the only one that will be across 2 episodes, and that's because I was kind of waiting for things to happen in the anime so I could make this video. But now that it's done and dusted, we're gonna stick to 1 episode per cut content video. Now, thank you guys so much for watching this video. Leave a like if you enjoyed it, subscribe to the channel, and I'll see y'all in the next one. Take it easy, everybody. Bye bye.